As promised, I have brought a special guest on with me today. When I met this person nearly 20 years ago, he said that his mom told him a life lesson. She said to him, if you can't be handsome, you better be handy. You better be one or the other. Well, I struck the jackpot because I married this guy, and he's not only handy AF. I mean, I rent him out sometimes, but he's handsome as well. So lucky me. Welcome to the Safe Realty Podcast with me, Shannon Cutler. I'm on a mission to educate my listeners so they don't become the next true crime news headline. As a former police officer with 18 years of experience and now a real estate agent, I guide realtors on how to handle their own security in vulnerable situations and develop best safe business practices. If you enjoy learning tools to improve your safety, I'm going to ask you to follow this podcast and share it with your friends, and even better, play it at your next office meeting. If you're new to Safe Realty, welcome. I'm so thrilled you have joined me today and joined with me on this special guest that I'm having on. I don't always have guests, and I'm bringing on my husband today. His name is James. He's a retired sergeant from the RCMP. He worked in remote violent community, larger centers, full-time undercover. And then he retired out of organized crime. He's done it all, but he doesn't like to talk about it. So I'm going to have to pull a few things out of him, I think. And I'm so excited that he has agreed to come on with me today. I'm thrilled that you're all joining us by listening to the Safe Realty Podcast. You know, it's going to be a bit of a ride today. So as you listen, think about someone who can benefit from this information and share generously with that coworker, business partner. And to be honest, the information we're sharing today would benefit anyone. You just never know when the worst thing could possibly happen. And just a gentle warning for this episode, or actually a strong warning for this episode, we discuss violence and assault and worst case scenarios. So please take care while listening. So I'm happy to welcome James Cutler, my husband, and I told you he was handy, and now you can tell he's also handsome if you're watching this on Spotify video or YouTube video. Anyways, James has agreed to join me today. You can say hi.
Hello. I don't know about the handsome part. I'll take it.
It's true. Ask anyone. So today you'll hear us discuss a few things. James has been with me since the beginning of talking about realtor safety, teaching the course, helping me develop it in the podcast episodes. And because of the background that he has, he is very qualified and to talk about this topic. So a few things we're going to talk about today with him, and he's going to do most of the talking, is survival mentality, and he can explain what that is. We talked a little bit about that in the intro. We'll talk about some tactics that are a sort of a self-defense tactic that goes along with protecting yourself. And then James has agreed to share a story with us in the way that he can relate to the topic he's discussing. So I think I'll just let you tell everybody a little bit about your background.
Okay. Like Shannon, I was a police officer working for RCMP for 25 years. Like most young police officers, I started off in young police officers in RCMP, I started off in a small detachment in northern British Columbia. And from there, I also had the opportunity within the RCMP to work as a emergency response team member on 2 different teams.
That's like a SWAT for the Americans.
Yeah, like special weapons and tactics. We deal with a lot of high risk situations. I think it's ironic that really what we're going to talk about today, as much as I was trained in those types of things, really they wouldn't have much of a role in what the topic's going to be today. So I think the most relevant thing for me to do is first share a little bit of a story to give context to what I'm going to talk about today, and then move into the topics, if that works.
Mm-hmm. Maybe just back up a bit and finish your background. So you went to small policing, emergency response team, and then what did you do after that for policing wise?
Well, I worked at a bigger detachment in central British Columbia. You worked a lot more with other people than I did in the smaller detachment. And then I also worked as in a covert capacity for 3 years, strictly full time, in which time we dealt with some, usually there are people who were being suspected of in different homicide investigations.
So he was covert means like secret, undercover.
Yeah, I was an undercover operator.
Undercover operator for and not like Downey Brasco, but
No,
you had a ponytail at one time.
I had a big long ponytail. Yeah, it looked a little different, that's for sure. Again, all interesting information. Are interesting career choices I had along the way. You have to be very careful and vigilant in how you approach those targets. So a lot of the preparation that you guys are talking about when you're meeting with clients, really a lot of it is the same. I think one thing I can add to some of the stuff that Shannon's already talked about with some of her guests is the preparation work before meeting somebody, like especially in that last job as an undercover operator. We would leave no stone unturned when it came to learning stuff about our target before we met them. So as a realtor, you can assume that the people, if you're being targeted, they have access to a lot of information that you don't really think about that they could use, but it becomes very, very useful. Some of that stuff on social media, I cringe at times when I see what people have on social media, only because from the perspective that I know that that is material that somebody who wants to get close to you, who wants to put you in a vulnerable position, they can exploit. The more information they know about you, the more advantage that they have. And I think that's why it goes hand in hand. And Shannon really is says over and over again about you as realtors finding about
who you're meeting before
like who you're meeting before you, and get as much information as you can about that person.
Like we talk about stranger danger.
Yeah.
And if they can find out information about you, why don't you take a minute to find out information about them should you have the opportunity, like showings and open houses and stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'll leave that for now. That's my introduction. After I finished in the RCMP, I did teach at a small college for a little while, these types of things. So a lot of good discussions came out. And I actually learned a lot when I was teaching that I didn't really think a lot about when I was working. So I hope some of that worked its way into this conversation today. So going back to my story, provide a little context, and I'll touch on different things as we go along. But I was had about 3 years service as a police officer, and if there's any police officers listening to me who have about that service, or you have friends and family members who maybe have that service, to me, I look back at it, it was probably the most dangerous I was in my career to myself, because at that point you have enough service that you've dealt with things that you start to get a little bit of false confidence in how you do things, and the things that you were taught and drilled into you, like being extra vigilant, about not taking chances, about apathy, you tend to let slip a little bit, and I really did.
The complacency aspect.
The complacency aspect, for sure. Yeah, that's a better way to put it. So for me, what happened, the situation I'm going to talk about is I was working in the small detachment, I was working with another RCMP member that night who had been sick, and he went home a little bit early because he wasn't feeling well. He told me that I could call him out if I needed to, but it was like midwinter in northern BC. It'd been pretty slow. We hadn't had a lot of calls that night, and generally there was only about 2-3 hours left of my shift, and I would have been going home. So I dropped him off, and about half hour to 45 minutes after I dropped him off, I got a call on the radio about a domestic dispute that was happening on a native reserve. I knew the people who were involved. I dealt with the fella a number of times. I'd arrested him already a number of times, usually without incident, minor struggles at best. So I felt, I guess I felt a little too comfortable, because really, right from training, they tell you that a domestic dispute is one of the most dangerous situations you can get into as a police officer. I knew that then, I know it now. But a little bit of that complacency set in. Plus, it did factor in that my friend had gone home sick and I really didn't want to bother him. I thought that I could deal with it on my own. I dealt with the person before. So, with that, I went up to the house where it was happening and was met right away by the victim's mother-in-law, who said that her daughter had just been beaten up. I went into the house. I saw her there. She had all the physical signs of being assaulted, and she told me that her boyfriend had done it, and he was in a back room. As I started to go down the room, he came out at me. At that point, I gave him verbal direction. He turned around, ran back into the room, which I had a lot of options at that point, and one of those options would have been just to get the people out of the house and to back up myself and to call my friend, get back up out there and effect the arrest when I had somebody else there. There wasn't anybody in the house, so I could have ensured everybody's safe. However, I did go forward thinking that I would be able to arrest him without incident. When I went into the room, he was relatively calm. I told him he was under arrest. At that point, all hell broke loose. And I think the real point that I want to make, and I'll talk about it later on, is it took me a while to actually process what was happening, if that makes any sense at all. I mean, I knew I was in a physical confrontation, but I didn't realize to what length he was willing to go in that confrontation and where we were going to go. So this went on for about, I would say less than a minute, 45 seconds. But in that time, I had lost my pepper spray, my baton. He had access to my baton, my radio, so I couldn't call for help. And about the only thing I had left on my person was my firearm, which I was trying to protect as he was like trying to get to that side of me to go for it. We both ended up falling down onto the bed in the room with him on top of me, and he was a bigger, heavier person than I was. So wasn't until that point that I realized I was in a lot of trouble. And a lot of time had passed that if I would have dealt with it differently, with a different mindset, I probably could have avoided that situation. Luckily for me, on that night, I did realize it at that point, and some adrenaline surge and a little bit of good luck, I was able to throw him off, get him off of me. He rolled off between the wall and the bed, so he couldn't move either way. And then at that point, I was able to neutralize him, effect the arrest, and get him out of the house. So it was just by the grace of God or good luck that I got out of that situation. But in any situation that police officers you need to focus in a situation like that. You need to focus on what you did wrong. Not that I got lucky at the end and made the arrest, but what all the things that I did wrong that led up to that point, because there were a number of points in it that I could have avoided before it got there.
It's like when anything big happened when we were policing, and you'd have like a debriefing with a group of people after of what happened, what went right, what went wrong, so that you could learn from it. Everybody could learn from it to not make it allow it to happen again. Or so is that something that for you that you had like a conversation with yourself, that the things that went wrong that you
Absolutely
discussed or thought about for yourself? That
Yeah, I really looked at it critically myself. At first, I was my ego was hurt, that was so stupid to put myself in that situation. But you have to get past that pretty quick so you can look at it and be critical, because that's what'll protect you and make you safe later on. So when I did look at it, I mean, the ego thing that I had about thinking I could deal with something like that on my own. Maybe sometimes you can, but you shouldn't leave anything to maybe in a situation like that. And I think that's the biggest thing, the complacency I had coming on. I guess you can go back to ego with that as well. But at the end of the day, I could have called somebody up, my friend up for help. I should have done that right away. That probably, they would have seen, if you would have seen two of us show up, there probably wouldn't have even been a struggle. If I would have backed out when I got there and just got the people out, like I mentioned earlier, that would have been an effective way to deal with the situation. But again, I ignored all that. And I can remember thinking it in my head, like I knew I had these options. It wasn't like I didn't think of it. It's just I kept pushing past my own instincts to do the right thing. And even when when the altercation started, when we were standing up, there was a point, and I'll touch on a little bit later, where my mind just wouldn't go to the point that this was actually unfolding in front of me. Like, and I was part of it. It felt like I was almost watching a movie, and it took a while, considerable time for that to happen. And that is what, when I talk about it here in a couple minutes, that point is critical. I got very lucky at that point. Um, but again, you don't want to leave anything to luck. So it's imperative that you recognize the situation that you're in immediately. The sooner you do, and it can be seconds, can make all the difference. It's that could save your life.
We talk a lot about slowing it down. Like at the beginning, you've said it a few times, like you could have taken people outside, taken a step back, got some help, and then slowing it down allows you to have like time to process, time to assess, time to change your plan, all those things. And it's a terrible story, which one I've never heard before.
Yeah, no, I don't talk a lot about it. It was not one of my finest moments, but it also, yeah, it can, even talking about it now, it kind of gives me a little bit of stress and angst. It was significant, but it was significant. I was able to use it in a good way because, and I hope that people can learn from this, and even if you've been in situations yourself, you can appreciate it. That this knowledge, to be able to pass it on, and I use it myself. I benefited myself and the rest of my career from it. But hopefully, we can draw some parallels here to what, if you ever find yourself in this situation or a similar situation, what you can do and how you can react faster to give yourself a better chance.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good place to go and talk about like this story that you've shared with us that's about, high risk policing, that most people won't be involved in a high risk policing incident. How can we use this to relate it to the realtor safety? I mean, this could be something for anybody, for safety in general, but how could a person who's in a high risk situation, how could this story that you shared with us help them?
Okay, so I've heard Shannon and some of the other people who talk on the podcast talk more at length of a different situation, of how to react in a situation, potentially if you got other people around. But in order to talk about this, let's go right to the worst case scenario. So you've gone to meet somebody at a residence that's maybe it's a rural residence, or there's nobody, it's a new community where there aren't many people living around. I did hear one of the podcasters talk about being very, very verbal and hoping to like scare the person off, or have them at least realize that you weren't messing around. I've got nothing wrong with being verbal in a situation like this, but keep in mind that, and I think Shannon's already talked to somebody, in a situation where you feel that, or your life is endangered, you may not be able to actually speak. It's your breath. Your body does a natural thing where it saves your breath for it needs oxygen to supply your muscles. So it's the same thing what happens to drowning victims. Most people have this image of people drowning, of flailing in the water and screaming for help. The truth is, drowning is very, very quiet because your body has actually gone into survival mode and it's conserving oxygen. And that can happen in a critical situation, in a fight. So you may not even be able to yell. So not that the information wasn't good when you're in a certain situation. I'm going to take it to another step where you are in a situation where yelling won't help you. And I want you to actually recognize that mentality of thinking you can scare somebody off, or you might be able to change their mind about the attack, it will not do you any good. I don't mean to be critical of anybody, but the problem with that is that you are wasting valuable energy and time.
And we're talking about, this is some of those situations are, maybe a little bit more public of an area, or teaching people to use a voice that maybe otherwise would be silent when they're scared or when they're frightening. That was part of the training. But when we're talking now, we're talking about, we're in the worst case scenario. Our life is at risk. All the other stuff aside, we're in trouble. Somebody has attacked us. We're fighting now. Like, this is where we're going now. We're not. Yeah. And so we're fighting for our life.
Yeah. And the sooner that you realize, you go into that mode where you're not just in a physical confrontation, but you are in a confrontation that you have to win to survive, I can't express it enough. how important that is. It can come down to the difference of 5 to 10 seconds. But if you do realize very quickly that you're in that situation and you have to change your mentality, and it has to be a survival mentality, and we'll talk about that, what that means, that's your best chance to get through that. The sooner that you get there mentally, the better you are. Like in the situation I talked about, had that situation, or had I realized early on when I first went in the room, when the confrontation first started, I would have reacted differently. And I don't think it would have gone on as long as it did. I had a lot of, as a police officer, I had a lot of tools on that I could have used that I actually didn't. And by the time I thought to use them, I was already in trouble. So in this situation, when you're in that, you have to get to that point in time where you realize you're fighting for your life. Now, we can come back to it at any time if you think we need to expand. But when I say fighting for your life, like, and we'll get into a few tactics like right now, but before I do, there'll be people out there right now who are saying, say if you're a smaller person, whether it be a male or female, the thought of actually having to fight somebody who's bigger than you, stronger than you do, and maybe if you haven't been involved in those types of confrontations before, it might be hard for you to believe that you can overcome somebody like that and win that battle. And I'm going to give you a couple analogies. One's kind of funny, to make the point that you can, and one's a little bit more serious. So the funny one, I say, for anybody out there who's a smaller person and doesn't feel that they have the physicality to win a fight against somebody who's bigger than them, I would ask them, is anybody out there, have you ever tried to bath a 7-pound cat, house cat, right?
It's impossible. And you're scarred when you leave.
And if you ever have, you know who wins that fight just about every single time, right? And part of that is, I think some cats, the one that I tried one time, and it was a kitten, it thought that I was trying to kill it or drown it because it went wild, like up my arm. I had scars all over, and that thing was probably 3 pounds. It wasn't even a full-grown cat. I couldn't believe this amount of strength and the willingness it was to actually fight that little cat had in it. So if you apply that to yourself, once you have that mentality that you're fighting for your life, the amount of strength that you can access and the amount of how ferocious you can be, you may not have ever tapped in it before, but you each have it. And that's one of the things you have to believe, whether you're ever in a confrontation or not. You have to have that belief in yourself that you can prevail. You can win that fight. You have that physical ability to overcome. So that was a little bit of a funny analogy. Now, this one's a little bit more serious, and it'll resonate more, I guess, with the mums out there. But I gave this same kind of talk in a class I was giving in college, and I was trying to get to the point of, because I had one student in the class who really didn't believe or could see how that she could prevail in a situation like that. And she was a mother. So I said this to her. I said, okay, if you had to fight me, she really didn't believe that she could win a confrontation against me. And, I was probably 40 pounds heavier than her. I was a police officer. I had a lot of training, things like that, physical training. And then I said to her, if I was trying to take your child from you, if I was in a park and ran up and I grabbed your child and tried to run away, do you believe you couldn't stop me? And she looked at me and said, can I swear?
You can swear.
She said to me, no fucking way you'd get out of there. I would kill you. Like, just like that. And she was serious. But what I did right there is I tapped into something that she had, but she didn't really realize she had. So that's what I'm talking about. Each of you can do this. You just have to, whatever it is, you have to tap in. You have to have that belief that you can. That's the first thing. Well, that's the first thing. You have that mentality. You carry that with you in life, and you know that. The next would be at a critical time, realizing you're in the situation, and then bringing that out however you do. If it's the thought of not going home to your children being raised without you, if that's what brings that out, then that's what you need to do. But more importantly, you just need to know that you can. That's the first step.
Survive.
You can survive. You can win that fight.
You can fight back.
Yeah.
And you have to with every single thing.
With everything you have. Yeah. Now that I'll go into a little bit about tactics, things you would do there, and there's no secret in a street fight. Like, I mean, sure, there's some people out there very, very well trained now in MMA, but there's certain things, even in MMA, combat sports, that tactics that they don't allow because they can cause very serious injury and life altering injuries. But when you're in a street fight, you're fighting for your life, nothing is off the table. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be as simple as taking a key that you have in your hand and putting it right into somebody's eyeball. And when you're not trying to scratch that eye or you poke their eye, you're not poking an eye, you're actually trying to take that eye out. Like that is your goal, is to disable them, to cause them as much pain in a short period of time as you can. It's something that everybody can do. It's not something that's complicated. There's no special wrist locks or anything like that. It's literally trying to tear out somebody's eye. Or if you're a lady and you're wearing heels and you stomp on somebody's foot, you're not trying to hurt their foot. You're trying to draw the spike, put that spike of that shoe right through their foot. That is the mentality you have to have. There's nothing pretty about it. There's nothing refined about it. It's the base level battle for your life, whatever it takes. Anything at your disposal can be used as a weapon, a coffee cup, uh, whatever whatever's sitting around
Frying
you.
pan.
Frying pan, your keys. If you do decide to carry pepper spray, the only thing I caution about tools like pepper spray and things, you need time and fine motor skills to access them. So if you are already in a fight, you're not going to have time to do that. You've got to resort to clawing out eyes, stomping on feet. The kick to the groin is one that I hear often, but I will warn you, like as much as girls have been taught to do that since they were like born,
On the first day on the playground.
yeah, guys have been taught that have learned one way or another. That's coming too. So it's one of the first places we expect you're going to try to hit us. So that's one of the first places we're going to be prepared to protect. So I wouldn't rely on that. But there aren't many people I know, and even my experience in policing, the couple times that I had to go for somebody's eyes, that people aren't prepared for that. And there's a great YouTube video. I see if I can find it for Shannon sometime, where these two guys squared off. It was a full on fight, no holds barred, and the whole fight was done in 5 seconds because the one guy just reached out with his finger, poked the guy right in the eye, put it right up to the first knuckle in his eyeball, and it was over. The fight was over right that quickly. That's how devastating something like that can be. So you don't. Special training is good if some of you want to get into it. I never say that it isn't. It enhances what you have, but even I've had people I worked with who are very, very well trained, and some of them didn't really do well when it came time to physical confrontations because that what you learn in a gym in a controlled environment is a lot different than what happens in a street fight when things are happening, unfolding in front of you. There could be a coffee table there or a counter or, you know, things laying around that you wouldn't normally encounter. So I think the biggest thing that I want to get across to you today is that whatever you have at your immediate disposal can be used to protect yourself, and you just have to get that mentality that it's there's one person that's winning, there's one person that's going home,
and that's you.
And whatever happens to the other person, that's not your concern whatsoever. Now, maybe best case scenario is when you unleash the beast, they run away. They were never ready for something like that. And if the worst case scenario is that you leave them in a puddle and you run to your car and get away, then that's fine too. Bottom line is the end result is what you want, is that you got away, and you're safe.
You're going home.
And you went home. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that kind of covers the points that I was hoping to get across today. But is there anything you feel I should clarify or you want me to expand on?
No, I just think one of the things you said at the beginning when you were talking about your story, the night at that domestic, and you said that you had pushed your instincts aside and gone in. And I think that's one of the things that, like we talked about before on this show and in the courses I teach about, at the very beginning, listening to that spidey sense or that gut instinct that's within you, and taking heed to what that voice is telling you, and stopping as much as you can, or whether it's a few seconds or a minute, to listen to it and then assess of whether the situation is the right situation. But you said that that you didn't listen to your own instincts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really important thing to get across, because we all have these instincts. But sometimes we just sort of push them aside to get the job done, or to just get this showing out of the way, or this client dealt with, so we can go home, make dinner for our kids, or pick up so-and-so from dance or basketball, and we rush through things. So I think all the things that you said in that story of what happened to you hits almost like everything that we talk about and we teach in elder safety, in just a different career path and a different, vocation. The survival mentality is a topic that it's hard to talk about. It's hard to hear it. Like, I feel even like inside me, like what that experience you had, like I feel your anxiety. I feel mine, like just thinking about you being in that situation and thinking, oh man, I was in lots of situations, but nothing that serious, and how quick things can change, and that we don't want it ever to be the worst case scenario, but it's okay to listen and learn about what the worst case scenario is, and to mentally prepare ourselves for the ability that we can make it home, we can survive, we will survive. We have no other choice but to survive. And I think that's it's a hard topic to talk about. I think it's an important one, and I hope that it helps somebody, protect somebody. I hope nobody ever has to deal with that. But if somebody was in this situation, that they now, are thinking about this and think, okay, that's how I would react. That's what I can do that. Because when you said about the first thing you need to do is have the survival mentality, know that you're the one going home. And the second thing is to know that you are in a situation in which you need to realize you're in that situation. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but you have to realize that the situation you're in is so dire that you need to pull out that survival mentality.
The sooner the better.
The sooner the better, and do whatever you can to make it out of there. So I think you've covered it well, and it's not an easy topic, but it's an important one, and I hope this information and the story you shared helps somebody.
Yeah, me too. It's I don't want to. I want to be clear, like just what you said. Everything that you're teaching is the right way. Like to have your best practices put into place, and that will keep you from these types of situations. Today was a worst case scenario. We talked about that, and it really is a worst case scenario. It's something that you don't ever, even though you have that mentality, you believe that you can prevail if you have to. It's never something, if you can avoid ever testing it, that's far, far better off. Because even if you do survive, and you will survive, it doesn't mean that you won't be left unscarred. So, obviously, whether it be mentally or physically, obviously, putting best practices in place is the way to go. And hopefully, this conversation is just
a conversation and
information.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
For me, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For coming on.
You're welcome.
Maybe you come back again, and maybe we'll talk about something a little less intense.
Sure.
Equally as important, but less intense.
Sounds good. Whatever you guys need. Yeah.
Awesome. I've never fully heard that story before, the one that James just shared with us. I knew a little bit about it. I knew it had some cause of, underlying things that he thinks about, maybe a bad dream or something that comes to him occasionally. But I'm glad he shared it with us. I think it's important to talk about situations like this, not to normalize that they're okay, but when you're policing, this is the kind of stuff that you never want to be in, but you sort of expect it could happen. But when you're a real estate agent or just a regular person, this is the last thing that you ever think would happen to you. So I'm glad we're talking about it. I know it was intense and scary and might have made people feel a little yucky, and it's okay. It's okay to know that you can fight through anything. And I think it's a really important message that we have to allow ourselves to be able to feel that we can fight should we need to. I did that episode on self-defense. We talked about finding your voice. It's okay to be rude. This is going beyond being rude and being loud and fighting back. It's about, the fight of your life to go home at the end of the day. There is an agent that did experience this in the late 90s. I'm hoping to have her on one day, but I really don't want to push it because it was the worst day of her life. And the two parolees that attacked her in a show home tried to kill her, and they didn't succeed because she fought so hard. I think she just exhausted them, and they left. They thought she may die when they left her there, but she didn't. And they did explain that when they were sentenced, that they just gave up because she fought so hard. And the whole point of my podcast isn't to scare people, although it is to alert people. But I want you to hear something so that when we read the news headlines, I guess we don't read a lot anymore, do we, as a society? We're listening to podcasts, we're listening to stories, and these true crime podcasts, we don't want to be on there as an episode. So we teach all the things, so that we can establish best safe business practices. But we can't stop there. We need to know how to fight back and that we can win should we ever need to. And I hope none of you ever do. Please share this message with someone that you care about or work with. And it doesn't have to be a realtor, because this kind of thing could happen to anybody, unfortunately. The information in today's episode may change a person's perspective and understanding of a critical and deadly situation, therefore protecting them. And if you have a story or a tip to share, it doesn't have to be extreme like this. It can be anything. Reach out to me via email or social media. Your experience could help someone, and it might be even featured on an upcoming episode. The links are below in the show notes. Thank you for listening today, and be safe, everyone.